I watched the mud swallow the blue cooler, and with it my heart. I saw my daughter-in-law Elena stomp the wet earth down with her boot, looking around like a thief in the night, before turning and vanishing into the storm. I stood at my attic window, my hand pressed against the cold glass, paralyzed. Please, I whispered to the empty room. Please don't let it be what I think it is. My name is Martha. I am 63 years old, and until that rainy Tuesday in November, I thought I had already lived through the worst day of my life. I was wrong. The worst day wasn't when my husband died of a heart attack 10 years ago. It wasn't even 6 months ago, when my only son David disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a confused mother and a wife who didn't seem to cry enough. No, the worst day was this one. The day the woods behind my farmhouse revealed a secret so dark it nearly stopped my heart. But let me back up. Let me explain how I ended up pressing my forehead against a foggy window at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, watching a woman bury a plastic box in the ground during a thunderstorm. It was raining hard, the kind of November rain that chills you to the bone and turns the Pennsylvania clay into thick sucking glue. I was in the attic looking for an old quilt. Since David vanished, I spent a lot of time looking for things, old photos, his high school yearbooks, anything that proved he was real, that he hadn't just evaporated into thin air, like the police suggested. They called it voluntary abandonment. I called it a lie. David would never leave his son. He would never leave Leo. Leo, my grandson, 2 years old, with David's crooked smile and eyes the color of acorns. I hadn't seen him in 3 months. Elena had told me she took him to live with her mother in Ohio. He needs stability, Martha, she had said, her voice cold and flat. He shouldn't be around your grief. She meant my obsession. She meant the flyers I put up, the times I called the station, demanding they search the river again. She thought I was cracking up. Maybe I was. But I wasn't crazy that afternoon. I saw the flash of red first, Elena's raincoat. She was struggling with something heavy, dragging it from the trunk of her car, which she had parked illegally on the old logging road that borders my property. It was a blue cooler, a large one, the kind you take camping for a week, but it was taped shut, wrapped in layers of silver duct tape. Why would you tape a cooler shut? My heart began to hammer a rhythm against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. I watched as she dragged it toward the treeline. She slipped once, falling to her knees in the mud, and I saw her strike the cooler with her fist in frustration. It was a violent motion, ugly. She reached a spot beneath the old oak tree, the one where David used to build forts. She picked up a shovel she must have stashed there earlier. She began to dig. She dug with a manic energy, tossing heavy wet clumps of dirt over her shoulder. She dug for 10 minutes, maybe 15. Then she shoved the cooler into the hole. She didn't handle it gently, she kicked it in. I stopped breathing. The rain lashed against the roof, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. She filled the hole, she stomped on it, she covered it with dead leaves. And then, without looking back, she ran to her car, the red raincoat disappearing into the gray mist. I waited until her taillights faded. 10 seconds, 20. My brain was screaming at me to move, but my legs felt like lead. What if it was just trash? What if it was just old files Elena was secretive? Maybe she was hiding money. But then I remembered the sound of the shovel hitting the earth, and I remembered the size of the cooler. Move, Martha, I ordered myself. I ran downstairs. I didn't grab a coat. I didn't grab an umbrella. I ran out the back door in my house slippers. The cold hit me like a physical blow. The rain soaked my blouse instantly, pasting it to my skin. I ran across the field, my slippers sliding in the mud. My arthritis flared in my knees, a sharp biting pain with every step, but I pushed it down. I pushed it all down. I reached the treeline, gasping for air. The smell of wet decay and wet earth filled my nose. The fresh mound was easy to spot. The leaves she had scattered looked unnatural and disturbed. I fell to my knees in the mud. I didn't have a shovel. I used my hands. I clawed at the earth like an animal. The mud was heavy, cold, and unforgiving. It got under my fingernails, into the cuts on my palms. I dug and I prayed. Please be money. Please be drugs. Please be anything but him. My fingers hit plastic, hard, cold plastic. I dug faster. I cleared the top of the cooler. It was wrapped in silver tape just like I saw. I grabbed the handle, but the suction of the mud held it fast. I pulled. I screamed a guttural sound I didn't recognize as my own voice. Come out! The cooler popped free from the mud with a sickening squelch. I dragged it onto the grass. I wiped the rain from my eyes. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely find the end of the tape. I picked at it, my nails breaking, my fingers slippery with mud. And then I heard it. It was faint, muffled, barely there, but it cut through the sound of the rain and the wind like a siren, a whimper, a tiny terrified scratch against the inside of the plastic. My heart stopped, the world stopped, the rain stopped. No, I sobbed. Oh God, no. I ripped at the tape with my teeth. I tore it away in strips. I unlatched the plastic lock. It was jammed with dirt. I hit it with the palm of my hand. Once, twice, it flew open. I threw the lid back. What I saw inside made me tremble, in a way I had never felt in my 63 years of life. Curled up in the fetal position, dressed in dirty pajamas that were too small for him, was Leo. He was blue. His lips were the color of a bruise. His eyes were rolled back in his head. There were scratch marks on the inside of the lid, where his tiny fingernails had tried to claw his way out. Leo, I screamed. I reached in, he was cold, so cold, he felt like a bag of ice. I pulled him out of that plastic coffin and pulled him against my chest. He was limp. Leo baby, Grandma's here, Grandma's got you. I put my ear to his chest. Nothing, I waited, then a flutter, a tiny uneven hitch. He gasped, a shallow wet sound, and then went silent again. He was alive, but barely. I stood up. My knees buckled, but I forced them straight. I held him inside my shirt against my skin, trying to share whatever warmth I had left. I ran back toward the house. The run back was a blur of terror. I slipped twice. I fell once, twisting my ankle, but I didn't let him go. I shielded his head with my hand. I crawled up the porch steps, leaving a trail of mud and blood where my knees had scraped the wood. I kicked the kitchen door open. The warmth of the house hit me, but I couldn't feel it. I laid him on the kitchen island, sweeping off a bowl of fruit that shattered on the floor. I grabbed the phone, my fingers were so muddy I couldn't press the buttons. I wiped them on my shirt. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? A baby, I choked out, my grandson, he was buried, he's cold, he's not breathing right. Ma'am, calm down. Who was buried? Send an ambulance. 420 Miller Lane now. He's turning blue. Okay, help is on the way. Is he breathing, ma'am? Barely, it's shallow. He's so cold. Get him warm, ma'am. Do not use hot water, use dry blankets. Body heat, stay on the line. I dropped the phone. I ran to the living room and grabbed the throw blankets from the sofa. I stripped Leo of his wet, filthy pajamas. His ribs were showing. He was so thin, thinner than he was 3 months ago, had she been starving him. I wrapped him in the blankets. I sat in the rocking chair, the same one I used to rock David in. I held him close. I rocked back and forth, humming a song that had no melody, just a desperate vibration in my throat. Stay with me, Leo, stay with me. Your daddy wouldn't leave you, and neither will I. The minutes stretched into hours. Every shadow in the kitchen looked like Elena coming back to finish the job. I watched the door. If she walked in, I would kill her. I knew it with a certainty that scared me. I grabbed a steak knife from the counter and held it in my hand while I rocked the baby. When the sirens finally cut through the storm, I didn't feel relief. I felt protective. The paramedics burst in, a tall man and a woman with kindness in her eyes. They took him from me. It felt like they were ripping my own limbs off. They put an oxygen mask on his tiny face. They wrapped him in thermal foil. Hypothermia, the man said. Severe dehydration. His pulse is thready. We need to go, the woman said. She looked at me. Are you coming, Grandma? I looked down at myself. I was covered in mud, my hands were bleeding. I was holding a steak knife. I dropped the knife on the floor, yes. The ride to the hospital was a kaleidoscope of lights and noise. I sat in the corner of the ambulance, holding Leo's tiny hand. It was dirty. There was dirt under his nails, dirt from the grave his own mother had dug for him. How long was he in there? The paramedic asked, working over him. I don't know, I whispered. She buried him. I saw her bury him. The paramedic paused and looked at me. A look of confusion, maybe disbelief. Someone buried this child, his mother, I said. The words tasted like bile. She put him in a cooler and put him in the ground. We arrived at County General. They wheeled him away behind double doors that I wasn't allowed to cross. I was left standing in the waiting room, dripping muddy water onto the sterile linoleum. People stared, I didn't care. A nurse brought me a towel and a cup of coffee. The police are on their way, she said gently. Because of the nature of the injuries. Good, I said. Tell them to bring handcuffs. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later, Detective Vance and Officer Miller. I knew Vance. He was the one who had closed David's missing person case 2 months ago. He was a man who liked easy answers. He didn't like me. Mrs. Calloway, Vance said, sighing as he sat down opposite me. He looked at my muddy clothes with a grimace. The hospital says you brought in your grandson. Leo, right, the one who was in Ohio? He wasn't in Ohio, I said, my voice shaking with rage. He was in a cooler, in the woods behind my house. Vance exchanged a look with Officer Miller. It was that look, the one that said, here she goes again. In a cooler, Vance repeated slowly. Buried, yes, Elena buried him. I saw her. Elena, your daughter-in-law. The one you filed 3 harassment complaints against last month. She was coming onto my property. She was looking for something. Mrs. Calloway, Vance said, leaning in, we called Elena. We called the number we have on file. She didn't answer, but we spoke to her mother in Ohio. She says Elena is there with her. She says Leo is there sleeping. The world tilted on its axis. That's a lie, I whispered. Leo is in the next room fighting for his life. We have a sick child in the next room, yes, Vance said. A child who is malnourished and hypothermic. But are you sure about how he got there? Is it possible, Martha, that Leo was with you, that maybe you took him and got confused, went for a walk in the storm? My mouth fell open. You think I did this? You think I hurt him? I know you've been under a lot of stress since David left. Vance said, his voice dripping with condescending pity. Grief makes the mind do strange things. Maybe you thought you were saving him, but you actually exposed him to the elements. I dug him up. I shouted. I stood up, ignoring the pain in my ankle. Go to the woods. Go to the oak tree. The hole is there. The cooler is there. It has her fingerprints on it. We'll send a car to look, Officer Miller said softly, stepping between me and Vance. Sit down, Mrs. Calloway, you're bleeding. I sat down. I felt trapped. They didn't believe me. They thought I was a senile, grieving old woman who had snapped. Just like when I told them David's brakes didn't sound right before he disappeared. Just like when I told them Elena had emptied their joint bank account 2 days after he vanished. I want to see my grandson, I said. He's stable, a doctor said, appearing at the door. He looked tired. He's warming up. But Mrs. Calloway, we found traces of a sedative in his blood. A high dose of liquid sleeping aid. If he hadn't been so cold, which slowed his metabolism, the drug might have stopped his heart. I looked at Vance. I don't keep sleeping pills, but Elena does. She takes them with wine. Vance scribbled something in his notebook. He didn't look convinced. We'll check it out. Hours passed. I sat in that plastic chair, shivering in my drying clothes. I replayed the scene in my head over and over. The red raincoat, the shovel, the tape. Why kill her own son? Money. It always came back to money with Elena. David had a life insurance policy. A big one, $500,000. But there was a catch. I knew because David had told me. The beneficiary was Leo, held in a trust until he was 18. Elena only got access to it if she was the primary caregiver, and if David was declared dead. But David wasn't dead. He was missing. The insurance company wouldn't pay out for 7 years on a missing person case. Unless the body was found, or unless the heir died. If Leo died, the money went to the next of kin. Elena, my blood ran cold. She wasn't just getting rid of a burden, she was cashing out. Detective Vance. I yelled. He was by the coffee machine. He walked over, annoyed. What is it now, Martha? The cooler, I said. The tape. Did you send someone? My guys are out there now. They're dealing with the mud. It's a mess. His radio crackled. A static voice came through, dispatched to Vance. Vance grabbed his shoulder mic. Go ahead. We found the site, sir. Miller Lane, behind the farmhouse. Vance looked at me. And you were right about the hole, sir. It's fresh, and we found the cooler. Blue plastic. Silver tape residue. Vance's face lost some of its color. He looked at me with new eyes. Okay, secure the scene. We're treating this as a crime scene. Copy that. Sir, there's something else. What? Since we were digging, the rain washed away some of the topsoil near the hole. It looks like there's another depression in the ground. Older. Maybe 6 months old. The air left the room. 6 months. What are you seeing? Vance asked, his voice tight. We see fabric, sir. Denim, and I think it's a boot, a work boot. I closed my eyes. Tears squeezed out hot and fast. David wore Timberland work boots. He lived in them. Don't say it, I whispered. Please don't say it. Secure the perimeter. Vance barked into the radio. Do not touch anything else. I'm calling forensics. He lowered the radio. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw shame in his eyes. Martha. He didn't run away, I said, my voice broken. She killed him. She killed my son and she buried him in his own backyard. And today she came back to bury the only witness. Vance nodded slowly. We need to find Elena now. But before he could pull out his phone, the hospital intercom chimed. Code Blue Pediatric ICU. Code Blue Pediatric ICU. My heart hammered. That's Leo. That's where Leo is. I ran. I didn't wait for permission. I ran down the hall, my slippers squeaking on the floor. Vance was right behind me. We burst through the double doors. Nurses were swarming around a bed. Monitors were screaming. Clear. A doctor yelled. A shock. A body jolting. No. I screamed. Leo. A nurse grabbed me. You can't be in here. What happened? Vance shouted, flashing his badge. He was stable. The doctor turned. He looked pale. He went into cardiac arrest, but not from the cold. His 4 lines, someone tampered with it. There's a high level of potassium in the bag. It stopped his heart. Tampered, I gasped, but no one has been in here except staff. A woman, the nurse said, trembling. A woman in scrubs. She came in 5 minutes ago. She said she was a transfer from oncology helping out. She had a mask on. I didn't think. Blonde hair, I asked. Short, yes, the nurse said. She had a red raincoat over her arm. I looked at Vance. She's here. She didn't go to Ohio. She followed the ambulance. She came to finish it. Vance pulled his gun. Lock down the hospital. Nobody leaves. Suspect is a white female, late 30s, blonde. Possibly wearing scrubs or a red raincoat. She is armed and dangerous. The alarms blared. The hospital went into lockdown, but I knew she wasn't leaving. Elena wasn't running anymore. She had tried to bury her secrets and I had dug them up. Now she was cornered. I looked at Leo. The monitor beeped. A steady, weak rhythm. He was back. I'm not leaving him, I told Vance. Give me a gun. Vance looked at me. I can't do that, Martha. Then stand guard, I said, because she's not done. She wants the money. She wants us dead. And she knows I'm the one who ruined her plan. Suddenly the lights in the hallway flickered. Once, twice, then total darkness. The emergency generators hummed to life, casting the room in a dim, eerie red glow. Smart, Vance muttered. She cut the power. From the darkness of the hallway, I heard a sound. The squeak of rubber soles on tile, slow, deliberate, and then a voice, calm and melodic, singing a lullaby. The same lullaby David used to sing to Leo. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. It was Elena. I grabbed a scalpel from the tray next to the bed. I stood in front of my grandson. I was 63 years old. I had arthritis. I was exhausted. But as I stared into the red-lit darkness, I knew one thing for sure. Only one of us was walking out of this room alive. Come and get him, you witch, I whispered. The shadow in the doorway stopped. I saw the glint of a gun barrel. Hello, Martha, Elena's voice floated out of the dark. You really should have stayed in the attic. The gunshot was deafening in the small room. It wasn't the bang you hear on television. It was a thunderclap that slammed into your chest. I flinched, shielding Leo's body with my own, squeezing my eyes shut as glass shattered behind me. Drop it! Vance roared. Another shot. This one pinged off the metal bed frame inches from my hip. I opened my eyes just in time to see Vance stumble back, clutching his shoulder. He fired his weapon, pop, 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 toward the doorway. The muzzle flashes lit up the room like strobe lights, revealing fleeting glimpses of Elena. She was smiling. That's the image that will haunt me until I die. She was shooting at a grandmother and a toddler, and she was smiling like she was winning a carnival game. "Martha, get down!" Vance shouted, collapsing against the wall. Blood was already blooming on his white shirt, dark and fast. I dropped to the floor, pulling Leo down with me, tangling us in the wires of the heart monitor. The machine was screaming a high-pitched alarm that drilled into my skull. "Elena!" I screamed from the floor. "It's over. They know everything. They found David." Silence from the hallway. Just the hum of the emergency generator, and the distant panicked shouts of hospital staff. "Vance," I whispered. "She's gone," he gritted out, his face pale and slick with sweat. He was pressing his hand hard against his collarbone. "She ran, she knows backup is coming." He was right. We heard the squeal of tires screeching out of the parking lot moments later. She had fled, but she hadn't left because she was scared. She had left because she had missed her shot, and Elena didn't like sloppy work. She would regroup, she would come back. The next 2 hours were a blur of police uniforms, SWAT teams and questions. They patched up Vance, he would live, thank God, and they moved Leo to a secure wing, but I couldn't sit still. Every time a door opened I jumped. Every time a nurse walked by, I looked at her shoes to see if they were muddy boots. "Mrs. Calloway," Officer Miller said, finding me pacing the hallway. He looked young, too young to be carrying a rifle. "We have an APB out on Elena's car. We have roadblocks on the interstate, she can't get far." "She's not going to the interstate," I said, my voice raspy. "She's not running away, Miller. She wants the money. She needs Leo dead to get it. She's going to finish this. We'll keep you safe here. Like you kept us safe before," I snapped. She walked right into the ICU with a badge and a needle. "This hospital is a sieve. Too many doors, too many people." "What do you suggest?" "I want to go home," I said. The words surprised me, but as soon as I said them I knew it was right. My farmhouse, it's isolated, it has one road in. I have a shotgun in the safe and deadbolts on the doors. If she comes for us, I want to be on my own ground. Miller hesitated. "Captain won't like it." "The captain isn't the one with a target on his back. I am taking my grandson home. You can send a detail to watch the perimeter, or you can arrest me. But I am not staying in this fishbowl." In the end my stubbornness won out. That and the fact that the hospital was currently a crime scene, and they needed to evacuate the wing anyway. They agreed to let me take Leo home, provided 2 patrol cars sat in my driveway all night. We drove back in the rain. The storm hadn't let up. If anything, it was angrier. The wind whipped the bare branches of the trees against the windshield like skeletal fingers. Leo was asleep in the car seat next to me, sedated and stable, wrapped in 3 hospital blankets. I reached back and touched his cheek every 30 seconds, warm, alive. When we pulled up to the farmhouse, it looked like a fortress against the black sky. It was the house my husband built. The house David grew up in. It had thick walls and creaky floors that announced every footstep. "We'll be right outside, Mrs. Calloway," Miller said, parking his cruiser at the bottom of the porch steps. Another unit parked by the barn. "Nobody gets within 100 yards of this place without us knowing." "Thank you," I said. I carried Leo inside. The house was cold. I laid him in the crib I had set up in my bedroom, David's old crib brought down from the attic just hours ago. I locked the bedroom door. I wedged a chair under the handle. Then I went to the gun safe in the closet. My hands trembled as I dialed the combination. Left to 10. Right to 24. Left to 60. Click. I pulled out the 12-gauge Remington. It was heavy, smelling of gun oil and memories. David used to use it for clay pigeons. I checked the chamber, loaded. I sat in the rocking chair facing the door, the shotgun across my lap. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark listening to the rain hammer the roof, listening to Leo's soft breathing, listening for the monster. I must have dozed off, I don't know for how long, but I woke up to a sound that wasn't the wind. Crunch, the sound of a boot on gravel. I sat up, my heart slamming against my ribs. I looked out the window. The patrol cars were there. Their lights were off to keep a low profile, but I could see the silhouettes of the vehicles. Then I saw it. The driver's side door of Miller's cruiser was open, just slightly, and the dome light was dark. Someone had smashed the bulb. "Miller," I whispered. I grabbed my phone to call Vance, who was recovering in the hospital. No signal. "Smart girl," I hissed. She had a signal jammer. Or maybe she had just cut the line down at the road. I looked at the second cruiser by the barn. It was empty. The officer wasn't in it. The radio silence from outside was louder than the storm. She had taken them out. 2 armed officers, and she had taken them out. How? She was a petite woman, a dental hygienist before she married David. But greed turns people into something else, and she had the element of surprise. Then the sound changed. It wasn't gravel anymore. Creak. The loose board on the back porch. The one David always promised to fix. She was on the porch. I stood up slowly, my joints popping. I moved to the crib. Leo was still sleeping deeply. I kissed his forehead. "Grandma loves you," I breathed. "Be quiet as a mouse, little one." I left the bedroom. I didn't want to trap us in there. If she came through that door, bullets would fly near the baby. I had to meet her in the hallway. I had to draw her away. I stepped into the corridor. The house was pitch black, but I had lived here for 40 years. I knew that the 3rd floorboard by the stairs squeaked. I knew the rug in the hall slipped if you stepped on the corner. I navigated the darkness like a ghost. I heard the back door lock click. She had a key. Of course she had a key. She had lived here for 3 years before they bought their own place. The door opened. The wind howled into the kitchen, bringing the smell of rain and ozone. Then the door closed. Silence. She was inside. "I know you're in here, Elena," I called out. My voice was steady, steadier than my hands. "Martha," she replied. Her voice came from the kitchen. She sounded conversational, like she was dropping by for tea. "You really are a nuisance. You know that. You just won't die." "I'm tough meat," I said, moving slowly toward the top of the stairs. I needed the high ground. "Unlike you, you're soft, Elena. You always were." "Soft," she laughed. A sharp, jagged sound. I dug a 6-foot hole in clay soil in 3 hours. I dragged a 200-pound man into it. "I'm not soft, Martha. I'm efficient." She admitted it, just like that. "Why?" I asked. I needed to keep her talking. I needed to know where she was moving. "David loved you." "David was boring," she spat. "He was small town. He wanted to stay here in this rotting house, play happy family, save every penny for retirement. I wanted a life, Martha. I wanted Cabo, I wanted Paris, and then he found out about the transfer." "The money," I said. "You were stealing from the business." "Just a little, to make life bearable, but he found the accounts. He was going to the police. He was going to divorce me and leave me with nothing." Footsteps, soft. She was moving into the living room. "I couldn't let that happen. The insurance was a nice bonus though, until you ruined it." "And Leo?" I asked, my grip tightening on the shotgun. "He's your son." "He's a witness," she said coldly. "He was in the back seat when I stopped the car to deal with David. He saw everything. He's too sure, but kids remember. And besides, with him gone, the trust fund dissolves to me. It's math, Martha, simple math. You're a monster, I'm a survivor. Now put the gun down. I know you have that old Remington. It kicks like a mule. You'll probably break your hip firing it. Come up here and find out," I challenged. I heard her foot hit the first step. I raised the shotgun. I aimed at the top of the landing. I couldn't see her, but I could hear her breathing. It was ragged. She was adrenaline dumped just like me. "You know," she said, her voice closer now. I checked the cruisers outside. Those boys were so easy. A little tap on the window, a little smile, and then pop. She had killed them. 2 young men with families. Rage hot and white flooded my veins. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. She took another step, then another. I waited. Then a flash of lightning illuminated the stained glass window on the landing. For a split second the hallway was bathed in purple and blue light. I saw her. She was halfway up the stairs, a pistol in her hand, her blonde hair plastered to her skull with rain. Her eyes were wild, dilated, soulless. I didn't hesitate. I pulled the trigger. Boom! The sound was apocalyptic in the enclosed space. The recoil slammed into my shoulder, sending a shockwave of pain down my injured arm. Plaster and wood exploded from the banister, right where she had been standing. I pumped the shotguns. Missed! She screamed. She returned fire. 3 shots tore through the floorboards at my feet. I scrambled back, crawling into the guest bedroom. "You're done, Martha!" she yelled, running up the remaining stairs. "You're out of time!" I scrambled under the bed. It was a cowardly place to hide, but I had a plan. This was the guest room. The floor in here was weak. David had been meaning to reinforce the joists for years. Right in the center under the heavy oak wardrobe, the wood was rotted. Elena burst into the room. She was panting. She swept the room with her gun. Come out wherever you are." I held my breath. I could see her boots, muddy heavy boots, the same ones she used to stomp the dirt over my grandson's face. She walked toward the closet. Then she turned. She saw the dust ruffle of the bed move. "Gotcha," she whispered. She stepped closer to the bed. Right into the center of the room. I rolled out from the other side, scrambling to my feet. "Hey!" I shouted. She spun around, aiming the gun at my chest. "Goodbye, Grandma." I didn't shoot her. I didn't have to. I aimed the shotgun at the floor right next to her boots, right at the base of the heavy oak wardrobe that was already leaning on the sagging floorboards. I pulled the trigger. Boom! The floor didn't just splinter, it disintegrated. The blast obliterated the rotted joist holding the weight of the room. The floor groaned, a terrible tearing sound of old wood giving up the ghost. Elena looked down, confused. The floor beneath her gave way. She screamed as the wood collapsed. The heavy oak wardrobe tipped forward, following the slope of the broken floor, and crashed down into the hole, taking Elena with it. They fell through the ceiling of the kitchen below. There was a tremendous crash of timber, glass, and metal. Then silence. I stood there panting, looking at the gaping hole in the floor. My shoulder was throbbing. My ears were ringing. I walked to the edge and looked down. In the kitchen below, amidst a pile of rubble and the smashed remains of the wardrobe, Elena lay still. Her leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, pinned under the oak wood. The gun had skittered across the linoleum out of her reach. She was moaning, alive but broken. I walked down the stairs. I took my time. I stepped over the debris in the kitchen. I picked up her gun and put it in my pocket. Then I stood over her. She looked up at me, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. The fight was gone from her eyes, replaced by pain and fear. "Help me," she wheezed. "I called the state police before we left the hospital," I said calmly. "I told them to come check on Miller in an hour if I didn't check in. They should be here any minute." "Martha, please, my leg." "It hurts, doesn't it?" I asked. "It's cold on that floor. Just like the ground was cold for Leo. Just like the dirt was heavy on David." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not," I said. "You're just caught." I went to the kitchen sink and poured myself a glass of water. I drank it while she cried on the floor. I didn't offer her any. 10 minutes later, the yard lit up with blue and red lights. Not local police, state troopers, dozens of them. They kicked in the door. They found me sitting at the kitchen table, the shotgun on the table, watching my daughter-in-law try to crawl out from under a wardrobe. "Mrs. Calloway?" A trooper asked, weapon drawn but lowered. "She's all yours," I said. "Be careful, she bites." The spring came early that year. The snow melted in March, revealing the scars on the land, but the grass grew back green and thick. I sat on the back porch watching Leo chase a butterfly. He was 3 now. He walked with a slight limp. The frostbite had taken 2 toes on his left foot, but he ran just fine. He laughed, a sound that filled the empty spaces of the farm. It had been 6 months since that night. They found David's body the next day, exactly where the muddy boot print had suggested. We buried him properly next to his father in the churchyard. It was a closed casket, but I put his favorite baseball cap on top of it. I finally got to say goodbye. Elena pleaded guilty. She did it to avoid the death penalty. She got life without parole plus 30 years. She sent me a letter from prison once. I burned it without opening it. The adoption papers had come through yesterday. Leo was officially mine. Leo David Calloway. Detective Vance, now Captain Vance, pulled into the driveway. His shoulder was stiff, but he was back on duty. He walked up the steps holding a file. "Afternoon, Martha," he said. "Captain. Just wanted to drop this off. Finalized report on the financial recovery. We managed to claw back most of what she stole from the business. It's in the trust for Leo." "Thank you," I said. He looked out at Leo running in the grass. "He looks good." "He is good," I said. "He's resilient. We Callaways are made of tough stuff." Vance smiled. "I learned that the hard way. You know the guys at the station, they call you the Iron Grandma now," I chuckled. "Tell them I prefer Martha." "What will you do now?" he asked. "With the house, the memories?" I looked at the field where the cooler had been buried. I had planted a garden there. Roses, fierce thorny red roses, they were blooming beautifully. We're staying, I said. This is our home, we cleaned out the ghosts, we fixed the floorboards, we let the light in. Leo tripped and fell on the grass. He looked up, his lip wobbling, ready to cry. Up you get, soldier. I called out, brush it off. He looked at me, saw my smile, and stood up. He brushed the dirt off his knees and grinned. I okay, Gamma? Yes, you are, I whispered, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. We both are. I took a sip of my iced tea. The nightmare was over. The secret was dug up, exposed to the light, and burned away. All that was left was the future. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. Because if anyone tried to hurt my boy again, they would find out that the most dangerous thing in these woods wasn't the wolves or the bears. It was his grandmother.